When my son Devin decided to move into the mansion owned by his millionaire mother-in-law, Vivian Sterling, his wife Candace, who insisted everyone call her Candy, followed him eagerly, without a second thought. She left me behind in the same house she had always openly despised. I still remember her final words clearly, shouted just before she climbed into the shiny imported sedan Vivian had sent for them. "Rot in that dusty old house, you washed-up old-timer." She yelled so loudly that neighbors stepped outside to watch. Devin didn't defend me. He didn't say a single word. He quietly loaded their suitcases into the car, got behind the wheel, and drove away without even looking back. I stood frozen on my front porch, watching them disappear down the street, heading toward the life of grand estates and servants they had always dreamed of. 3 long months passed. Not a single phone call. Not one message. It was as if I no longer existed, like I had died to them. Then, one Thursday afternoon, they came back. This time, they didn't arrive in a luxury car. They showed up in a battered rideshare, dragging the same suitcases they had left with, only now those bags were no longer full of dreams. Their faces were heavy with defeat. When I opened the door and saw them standing there, eyes full of desperation, begging me silently to let them in, I greeted them in a way that shocked even Tony, the driver who had brought them. What they didn't know was that those 3 months without them hadn't broken me. They had changed me completely. But to understand that moment, I need to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to who I was before everything fell apart, before Candace stormed into our lives like a hurricane made of ambition and poison. My name is Eleanor, and I am 64 years old. This house, the modest 2-story home I live in, tucked away in a working-class neighborhood on Detroit's north side, is everything I own. I bought it 30 years ago with the money from my husband's life insurance policy. He died in a construction accident when Devin was just 8 years old. One morning, he went to work like he always did, and he never came home. Suddenly, I was alone with a little boy, mounting debts, and that insurance check. I used it to buy the one thing I knew would give us stability, a roof over our heads. For 25 years, I worked as an administrative assistant at an accounting office. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady. I raised Devin on my own. I clothed him, fed him, paid for his school, his supplies, and his dreams. He never lacked anything, except a father. I tried to fill that role too. I worked myself to the bone, took extra shifts when I could, and saved every dollar so he could go to college. And he did. Devin studied hard, graduated as an engineer, and landed a good job. I was incredibly proud. I truly believed all my sacrifices had finally paid off. Then Candace entered our lives. Devin met her 4 years ago at a company conference. She worked in public relations, always perfectly dressed, always carrying herself like she was better than everyone else. From the very first moment, she made me uneasy. When Devin introduced us, I smiled and hugged her like I would anyone. She barely offered her hand, as if touching me might contaminate her. I should have noticed it then. The way her eyes scanned me from head to toe, my simple dress, my worn shoes, my modest home, judging everything. They got married 6 months later. It was a small wedding. I couldn't afford anything fancy, and Devin didn't want me to go into debt. Candace was in a terrible mood all day. Her mother, Vivian, didn't even attend. Instead, she sent an expensive gift with a cold note saying she was away on business in Europe. I cooked the food myself, my best dishes. Mac and cheese, collard greens, fried chicken. Everything I knew how to make well. Candace barely touched her plate. I later overheard her whisper to a cousin, "It tastes like cheap takeout." After the wedding, Devin and Candace moved in with me. They said it would only be temporary, just until they saved enough for their own place. I was happy. The house felt alive again. I fixed up the upstairs room, the biggest one, with a view of the small garden out back. Fresh sheets. Clean curtains. I honestly believed we were going to be a family. I couldn't have been more wrong. From the very first night, Candace started complaining. The house smelled old. The walls needed repainting. The bathroom was too small. The furniture looked like it had been pulled out of a dumpster. Every single day, there was something new to criticize. At first, Devin tried to smooth things over with nervous laughs. He said she was just used to a different lifestyle and that I should understand. And I did, or at least I tried. I swallowed my feelings, held back my tears, and kept cooking and cleaning, doing everything I could to make them comfortable. As months passed, things only got worse. Candace stopped eating my food, calling it greasy, heavy, and common. She ordered meals from expensive restaurants and left the empty containers around for me to clean up. She invited her friends over and apologized to them for having to live in such a humble place. Devin grew quieter. He started coming home late and shutting himself away in their room. I could hear them arguing at night. Candace would cry, saying she couldn't live like this anymore, that her mother was right, that she deserved better. Then Vivian started coming by. Visit isn't the right word. Inspect is more accurate. She arrived in imported cars with a driver, dressed like she was attending a gala. She walked through my home with thinly veiled disgust, perched on the edge of the sofa as if poverty were contagious. And she talked, endlessly. She told Devin he had potential. That he had built a solid career despite his humble background. That with the right connections, he could go far. Then she would turn to me and smile, a cold smile that never reached her eyes. Eleanor, she'd say, it's admirable that you did so much with so little. Not everyone is fortunate enough to be born into the right position. I would clench my fists under the table and smile back. I always smiled for Devin. I didn't want to cause conflict. I believed that if I stayed patient and kind, Candace and her mother would eventually see that I only wanted what was best for my son. How foolish I was. People like them don't respect kindness. They see it as weakness, and they attack weakness the way sharks attack blood in the water. Everything finally changed one Friday night when Vivian came over for dinner. I had cleaned the house until it sparkled. I placed fresh flowers on the table. Candace hadn't spoken to me properly all week, but that evening she was unusually cheerful. During dinner, Vivian bragged about her estate, her travels, and the opportunities she could give Devin, if he were in the right environment. Then she said it. Devin, why don't you come live with me, she said casually. I have an entire wing of the house that isn't even used. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a private balcony. Candace would be so happy there. And you could focus on your career without. She stopped and looked straight at me, without the slightest hint of concern. The silence that followed was unbearable. Devin stared down at his plate. Candace's eyes sparkled with excitement, and I felt my heart shatter quietly inside my chest. Still, I smiled. I always smiled. Devin has to decide what's best for him, I said softly, even though inside I was screaming. And he did decide. Of course he did. A week later, they began packing. That week, between Vivian's offer and the moving day, felt like slow, deliberate torture. Devin barely spoke to me. Whenever I tried to start a conversation, he'd look away, mumble that he was busy, and disappear into the bedroom. Candace, on the other hand, glowed. She moved through the house like she no longer belonged there, as if every second spent under my roof was beneath her. I heard her on the phone with friends, bragging about the mansion, the gardens, the heated pool. She never once mentioned me. It was as if the last 2 years had never happened. I tried one last time to reach my son. 2 nights before the move, I found Devin alone in the kitchen, filling a glass of water. I approached carefully, like I might startle him. Son, are you sure about this? I asked gently. This is your home. It will always be your home. He set the glass down harder than necessary. Mom, I'm not a kid anymore. I need to build my own life. Candace isn't happy here. And you? I asked. He didn't answer. He just walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there with my words hanging uselessly in the air. That was the last real conversation we had. On moving day, a small rental truck pulled up, They didn't have many belongings, most of the furniture was mine, but Candace made sure to pack every gift I had ever given them, every photo where they appeared alone, as if she were erasing all evidence of their life in my home. I helped load the boxes. Devon avoided my eyes. Candace supervised everything with a victorious smile that cut deeper than any insult. When the truck was full, Vivian arrived in her luxury car. She didn't even step out. She honked twice, sharp and impatient, like someone calling dogs. Candace rushed to the car. Devon carried the final suitcases and finally looked at me. Just for a second, one brief second, I saw it in his eyes. Guilt. Regret. Then Candace called his name and the moment disappeared. "Take care, Mom," he said quickly and turned away. "Devon, wait," I called, but he was already walking off. Candace rolled down the window, wearing that expression I had learned to hate, contempt mixed with triumph. And then she screamed it, loud enough for everyone to hear. Words that burned themselves into my soul. "Rot in that dusty old house, you washed-up old-timer. We're going to live the right way, not like rats in this filthy hole." The neighbors came out. Mrs. Carol Jenkins from next door. Mr. Frank Powell from across the street. Everyone saw it. Everyone heard it. Devon climbed into the car without saying a word, without defending me, without even turning back. Vivian started the engine, and they drove away. Just like that. I stood there on the curb while my neighbors watched with pity, the tears finally spilling down my face. Mrs. Jenkins came over and hugged me. "Oh, Eleanor," she said, "that woman is unforgivable. And your son should be ashamed." But I didn't want comfort. I didn't want pity. I went inside and closed the door. The house was painfully silent. For the first time in years, I was completely alone. I sat on the old sofa, the same one Candace had mocked, and I cried. I cried for hours. I cried for my son, who had chosen luxury over his own mother. I cried for the years I had sacrificed raising him, only to be abandoned like this. I cried for the humiliation, for the loss, for everything. Days passed and turned into weeks. At first, I checked my phone constantly, waiting for a call, a message, anything. Nothing ever came. Devon didn't call once. It was as if I no longer existed. The neighbors looked at me with sad eyes. Some brought food, like I was in mourning. And maybe I was. I was mourning my son, not to death, but to something worse, ambition and ingratitude. One night, unable to sleep, I heard noises outside. I looked out the window and saw a group of kids spray painting my wall. The next morning, I saw what they'd written, "The Abandoned Woman's House." Someone had spread the story. Now I was a neighborhood spectacle, the pathetic woman whose son had left her behind. I scrubbed the wall myself. It took 3 hours and 2 buckets of soapy water. Mrs. Jenkins offered to help, but I refused. I needed to do it alone. With every scrub, something inside me shifted. The sadness began turning into something else, something firmer, stronger. That night, for the first time in a month, I didn't cry. I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and really looked around. Candace had been right about one thing: the house needed work. The walls were faded. The furniture was old. The backyard was neglected. But not because I was miserable or worthless, like she claimed. It was because I had poured everything I had into Devon. I had forgotten to take care of myself. Forgotten my own space. I opened a notebook and made a list: paint the walls, fix the leaky bathroom faucet, change the curtains, clean up the garden. Everything Candace had criticized, I would improve. Not for her. Not to prove anything to anyone. But for me. This was my house. My home. And I deserved to live somewhere beautiful. The next day, I took out my savings. It wasn't much. Most of it had gone to Devon's wedding and helping them while they lived with me. But I had about $3,000 left, saved for emergencies. And this was an emergency. Not of money, but of dignity. I went to the hardware store and bought paint, cream for the living room, light green for the kitchen, soft yellow for my bedroom. A young employee named Marcus Reed helped load everything into a cab. "You're going to paint alone, ma'am?" he asked, concerned. "Yes," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. "I'm going to paint alone." I started that same afternoon. I moved the furniture, covered everything with old newspapers, and got to work. I'd never painted a house before, but I learned quickly. The first day was a disaster. I splattered paint everywhere, stained the floor and a curtain, but I didn't stop. With every brushstroke, it felt like I was covering my pain, replacing the past with something new. Mrs. Jenkins checked on me every day. "Eleanor, you're working yourself to death. You should hire someone." But I didn't want to. I needed to do it myself. I needed to feel in control again. For 2 weeks, I painted. My back ached. My arms burned. But when I finished the living room and saw those fresh, clean walls, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. Still, one question haunted me. How was Devon? Was he happy in that mansion? Did he ever think of me? The mother in me, the part that never dies, still worried, still missed him, and I hated myself for feeling weak. Then I remembered Jasmine Hayes. Jasmine had worked with me for years at the accounting office. She had studied law at night and become a lawyer. We hadn't spoken much lately, but we were close once. Maybe she could help, not to sue Devon, never that, but to protect myself, to make sure this house remained mine. I called her. She sounded surprised, but happy. "Eleanor. It's been so long. How are you?" And for the first time, I told the truth. "Not very well, Jasmine. I need to talk. Can we meet?" We met the next day at a small coffee shop near her office. I arrived early, nervous. When Jasmine walked in, I barely recognized her. She wasn't the timid secretary I remembered. She carried herself with confidence, wore a sharp suit, and held a leather briefcase. She had become someone powerful. I felt small, until she smiled and hugged me tightly. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Acceptance. "Eleanor, tell me everything," she said. And I did. From the moment Devon met Candace to the day they left. I told her about the insults, Vivian's cruelty, Candace's public humiliation. I told her about the sleepless nights, wondering where I had failed as a mother. Jasmine listened quietly, her expression hardening with every word. When I finished, she took my hand. "What they did to you is unforgivable," she said. "But I need to ask, whose name is the house in?" "Mine," I answered. "I bought it 30 years ago. Everything is in my name." She nodded. "Good. Very good. Does Devon have any paperwork making him a co-owner?" "No. Why would he? With people like that mother-in-law, you can never be sure," she said gently. "And there's something else you should know. What Devon did, leaving you without support, could legally be considered elder abandonment. You're 64. You have rights." I froze. Sue my own son? No. I could never. "I'm not telling you to," she said. "I just want you to understand that you're not powerless. Save every message. Document every silence. Not because you'll use it, but because you might need it." Her words stayed with me. I had rights. I wasn't defenseless. Weeks passed. I kept working on the house. I fixed the faucet. I hired Marcus to help with repairs I couldn't manage alone. He was honest, hardworking, and fair. We rebuilt the garden, planted flowers, fixed the fence. I replaced the curtains with light beige ones that filled the rooms with sunlight. I added plants to the living room. Little by little, the house changed. And so did I. I lost weight. My skin looked healthier. But the biggest change was inside. I was no longer the woman who cried every night. I was becoming someone stronger, someone who didn't need approval to feel worthy. One afternoon, while watering the garden, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Mom. Devon's voice sounded strained. Desperate. My heart jumped. After nearly 3 months of silence, he was finally calling. Devon, are you okay? Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine, he said quickly. Listen, Mom. I need to ask you a favor. It's important. A favor? No, I miss you. No, I'm sorry I haven't called. Not even how have you been? Just a favor. What do you need? I asked. My voice came out colder than I meant it to. I need you to lend me money, Devon said. $5,000. I need it urgently. I swear I'll pay you back in 2 months. I went completely still. $5,000. I had exactly $5,200 in my account. Every cent I had left after repairing the house. My safety net. My peace of mind. What do you need the money for, Devon? I asked. He hesitated. It's expenses. Things came up. I can't explain right now, but I really need it. Expenses? I said slowly. Don't you live in a mansion with your millionaire mother-in-law? What kind of expenses could you possibly have? Mom, please don't start, he snapped. Are you going to help me or not? The sharpness in his voice hurt more than anything Candace had ever screamed at me. This was my son, the boy I had raised, talking to me like I was a bank account. Devon, I said quietly, I haven't seen you in 3 months. You haven't called once to check if I was alive or dead. And now you call asking for money. Do you really expect me to say yes? I knew you'd react like this, he said bitterly. You're always the same, always playing the victim. If you don't want to help, just say so. Something inside me broke, but not with sadness. With clarity. In that moment, I finally saw my son for who he had become. A man who only remembered me when he needed something. No, Devon, I said firmly. I will not lend you the money. There was a long silence. Then I heard Candace shouting in the background. Devon let out a frustrated sigh. Fine. Perfect. I already knew I couldn't count on you. Goodbye, Mom. And he hung up. I stood there in my garden, phone still in my hand, feeling an unexpected mix of pain and freedom. I had said no. For the first time in my life, I had said no to my son. And even though it hurt, it also felt right. That night, I called Jasmine and told her everything. She let out a low whistle. $5,000, she said. Eleanor, something is wrong at that mansion. Millionaires don't borrow $5,000 unless there are serious problems. You really think so? I asked. I'm sure of it. Let me dig into Vivian Sterling. It's good to know who your son is dealing with. Part of me didn't want to know. I wanted to move on, forget Devon and his new life. But another part, the part that was still a mother, needed to know he was okay. A week later, Jasmine called me back. Her voice was serious. Eleanor, we need to talk in person. Can you come to my office tomorrow? When I arrived, she had a folder waiting on her desk. She handed it to me. Vivian's mansion isn't hers, she said. She's renting it, and she's behind on payments. Her import business is drowning in debt. She's been living off appearances. Smoke and mirrors. I stared at the papers in disbelief. The car, the clothes, most of it is rented or bought on credit, Jasmine continued. She's buried in debt. And there's more. She's been charging Devon and Candace rent. For the room. The food. Everything. Your son wasn't living for free. She was squeezing every dollar out of him. I felt a strange mix of emotions. A small, bitter satisfaction that Candace's fairy tale had never existed, and deep concern for Devon. What do I do with this? I asked. Nothing, Jasmine said. Just keep it. Something tells me you'll need it soon. She was right. 2 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there they were. Devon and Candace. Suitcases in hand. Faces drained of all pride. Tony, the rideshare driver, stood behind them, watching wide-eyed. I was no longer the woman they had left behind. And what I did next would leave everyone stunned. Time seemed to freeze. 3 months and 2 weeks had passed since Candace screamed those cruel words at me in front of the entire neighborhood. Now they stood on my doorstep, soaked by rain, wearing the same expensive clothes, wrinkled, stained, and lifeless. Candace's eyes were red and swollen. Devon couldn't meet my gaze. Tony unloaded more suitcases, the same ones they'd left with, now scratched and battered. Mom, Devon said finally, his voice breaking. We need to talk. Can we come in? I didn't move. Talk? I repeated calmly. Interesting. 3 months ago, you didn't want to talk. You wanted luxury. You wanted me to rot in my dusty old house. Those were your words, Candace, weren't they? Candace flinched. For the first time, she was speechless. Mom, please, Devon said. We made a mistake. A huge one. Vivian, things didn't work out. Oh? I said coldly. What didn't work out? The mansion? The generosity? Or the fact that she wasn't as rich, or as kind, as you imagined? Tony stepped forward. Ma'am, that'll be $120 for the ride. Devon froze. I don't have cash. Can you take a transfer? The app isn't working, Tony said. I need cash. They searched their pockets. Candace pulled out a wrinkled 50. Together, they scraped up $115. $5 short. Tony looked at me. He was waiting, for me to fix it, like always. I crossed my arms. I'm sorry, Tony. I didn't order this ride. Devon's eyes widened. Candace started crying. Tony sighed. I need to get paid. We'll pay you, Devon begged. Give me 2 days. Tony reluctantly accepted the $115 and drove off, muttering under his breath. Rain poured down harder. Mom, please, Devon said, lifting a suitcase. We're soaked. Can we come inside? I looked at my house, my freshly painted walls, my garden, the home I had rebuilt with my own hands. No, I said. What? Devon whispered. No. You can't come in. Candace sobbed. Eleanor, please. Vivian threw us out. We've been sleeping in motels for days. Just for tonight. Just for tonight, I repeated. Like when you moved in temporarily? Like when you spent 2 years humiliating me in my own home? I'm sorry, Candace cried. I believe you, I said. But you're not sorry for what you did to me. You're sorry because now you're in my place. Mom, Devon said desperately. I'm your son. And when you left, I replied, you left me. I told them everything. About the silence. The humiliation. The nights I cried. The graffiti on my wall. This house is my sanctuary now, I said. And you are no longer welcome here. Candace collapsed to her knees. Mrs. Jenkins and Mr. Powell watched from their yards, the same neighbors who once saw my shame. Now they saw my strength. What do you want us to do? Devon begged. I don't know, I said calmly. Figure it out. Like I had to. I reached for the door. Wait, Devon pleaded. Vivian lied. She used us. She took everything. I looked him straight in the eyes. I used to say family was everything, I said quietly. But family goes both ways, Devon. And you showed me exactly where I stood. And then I closed the door. Gold dining chairs with faux marble top. What do you want me to do with that? I asked, my voice calm and empty of emotion. Nothing, she said quietly. I don't want anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I know you'll never forgive me, and that's okay. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I only wanted you to know that I finally understand how awful I was. I looked at her for a long moment. This apology felt different from the one she had given a month earlier in the rain. That one had been desperate, filled with fear and manipulation. This one was different. It was heavy, honest, and painful. I believe you, I finally said. I believe you mean it. But you're right about one thing. I'm not going to forgive you. Not now. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness isn't something that comes just because someone says sorry. It's earned, with time and actions. And honestly, Candace, I have no interest in giving you that time. She nodded slowly, accepting my words without argument. I understand. Thank you for listening to me. She turned to leave, then paused. Your house looks beautiful, by the way. It always was. I was just too blind to see it. I watched her walk down the street, her shoulders slumped, but her steps calmer than before. I didn't feel victory. I didn't feel anger. I felt something quieter, a chapter closing. That night, Jasmine came over with news. Vivian's trial is next month, she said. The evidence is solid. She'll likely spend several years in prison. Poor Devon, I said automatically. The word surprised even me. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. You still worry about him? He's my son, I replied softly. Part of me always will. But worrying doesn't mean rescuing. Both things can exist at the same time. She smiled gently. You're stronger than you think, Eleanor. November arrived with fresh air and quiet renewal. My days fell into a peaceful rhythm. I woke up early, made coffee, played with Luna, tended my garden. Thursdays were for dancing. Sundays were for the park with Ruth. I decorated my house with new paintings and plants. Every corner felt alive. One morning, Mr. Powell knocked on my door. My nephew, Ken, just moved to town, he said. He's an accountant looking for work. Could you give him some advice? Of course, I said. Ken turned out to be kind, shy, and genuine. We talked for hours about firms, opportunities, and changes in the industry. When he left, he thanked me warmly. That was when it hit me, I was forming new connections. Real ones. My world was growing, no longer trapped in the painful cycle of pleasing Devon and enduring Candace. November turned into December. Christmas lights filled the streets. Normally, this season made me ache with memories of Devon as a child. But this year felt different. Ruth invited me to a holiday dinner with her friends, and I happily accepted. As I got ready that night, I looked at myself in the mirror, and really saw myself. My face looked alive. My eyes were bright. I had found something I'd lost long ago, joy. Not the joy of serving others, but the joy of being at peace with myself. Luna meowed from the bed. Do I look good? I asked her. She purred. I took that as a yes. The dinner was warm and joyful, 8 women sharing stories of loss, survival, and rebirth. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. When I returned home, I noticed an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a handwritten letter. It was from Devon. He wrote that he had found a new engineering job. That he and Candace had moved into a small but decent apartment. That he knew he had failed me in unforgivable ways, but that he thought of me every day. He promised that one day, if I allowed it, he would prove he could be the son I deserved. I read the letter twice. It wasn't forgiveness I felt, but something shifted. Maybe hope. Maybe the beginning of change. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't answer it. But I didn't throw it away either. January arrived bitterly cold. I welcomed the new year surrounded by friends, grateful for everything I had gained. One morning in mid-January, while drinking coffee in my garden wrapped in a thick sweater, I saw a beat-up car stop in front of my house. Devon stepped out. Candace followed. They looked thinner, more serious, but determined. Devon held a box. They didn't ring the bell. They didn't call out. They simply waited. I watched them for a long time. Luna purred in my lap. I had everything I needed. I could have gone inside. But their quiet respect made me stand up. I walked to the fence, but didn't open it. "What do you want?" I asked. Devon lifted the box. "These are all the house documents, deeds, receipts. Everything is in your name. I also signed a legal waiver." He handed me a paper. "I wanted it in writing so you never have to worry." I read it carefully. It was notarized. He had legally renounced any claim to my home. "Why?" I asked. "Because you gave everything for me," he said, his voice breaking. "And I repaid you by abandoning you. This is the least I can do." Candace stepped forward. "I got a stable job cleaning offices," she said. "Every day, I think about you. About how you cleaned your home with care while I mocked it. I learned that honest work has dignity." Devon continued, "My mother-in-law is going to prison. 5 years. Candace and I are in therapy. We're trying to understand why we were so cruel." I studied them. This time, their words felt real. "I'm glad you're working on yourselves," I said. "But it doesn't erase the past." "We know," Devon said. "We're not asking for forgiveness. Just understanding." Candace handed me an envelope. "It's $500. It took months to save. And we'll keep paying you back." "I don't want your money," I said instinctively. "Please," Devon insisted. "You deserve it." I looked at the envelope and finally took it. "This doesn't mean things are okay," I said firmly. "We understand," they replied together. "You have a long road ahead," I added. "Prove it with actions." 4 years. Devon nodded, tears in his eyes. "I'll spend my life trying to be the son you deserved." They left quietly. This time, I felt no pain. No triumph. Just closure. Forgiveness hadn't arrived, and maybe it never would. But change had begun. That afternoon, Jasmine visited. I told her everything. She reviewed the documents and nodded approvingly. "You handled this perfectly," she said. And for the first time, I believed it myself. "This is solid," Jasmine said after reviewing the papers. "Your house is completely protected. And the fact that he did this without you asking says a lot, Eleanor." "What does it say?" I asked. "That maybe, just maybe, he's finally starting to understand what he did." The months kept passing. Every 30 days, without fail, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was money and a short note from Devon. "Thinking of you, Mom. Hope you're well. Luna must be getting big now." He never asked for anything. Never expected a reply. He simply kept his promise and paid back what he owed. I placed every envelope in a drawer. I didn't spend the money. I wasn't ready. But I saw the effort, and I respected it. In March, Ken, Mr. Powell's nephew, invited me to dinner. He had landed an excellent job thanks to the contacts I'd shared with him and wanted to thank me. I expected a polite, brief meal, but it turned into one of the most enjoyable evenings I'd had in years. Ken was smart, warm, and genuinely funny. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in a long time. When he dropped me off, he smiled shyly and said, "I'd like to see you again, Eleanor, if you'd like that." "Yes," I surprised myself by saying. It wasn't romance. Not yet. Maybe it never would be. But it was companionship. It was connection. And for now, that was more than enough. April arrived with flowers bursting all over my garden and a deep sense of renewal. 8 months had passed since that rainy day when Devon and Candace showed up at my door with their suitcases, and I turned them away. 8 months of rebuilding my life piece by piece, turning it into something stronger and more beautiful than it had ever been. One afternoon, while watering the plants with Luna weaving between the flowers, I heard familiar voices on the street. Devon was there, helping Mrs. Jenkins carry her groceries into her house. I watched from my garden without him noticing me. He looked thinner, but stronger somehow. There was something in his posture, in the way he smiled naturally while talking to Carol, that told me the change was real. When he finished helping her, he looked up and saw me. He froze for a second, then lifted his hand in a shy wave. I nodded back. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd given him in months. I saw hope flicker across his face as he continued down the street. That night, Ken came over for dinner. We'd been seeing each other regularly for 2 months, nothing serious. Just dinners, walks, and long conversations about life. He never pushed, never demanded more. He was simply present. "Your garden is beautiful," he said as we ate on the patio. "It feels alive." "That's how I feel," I replied with a smile. Like I finally woke up after years of being asleep. He reached across the table and gently took my hand. "I'm glad I met this version of you, the strong woman who lives for herself." After Ken left, I sat in my living room with Luna curled up on my lap. I looked around at my house, the house Candace had once despised. The walls I had painted myself glowed warmly under the lights. The furniture she'd called junk now felt full of history and character. Every corner told the story of my rebirth. Devon's monthly envelope arrived as usual. But this time, there was something else inside, a photograph. It showed Devon and Candace standing in a park, smiling genuinely, dressed simply but neatly. On the back was a note. "We signed up for community cooking classes. Candace learned to make mac and cheese. It's not as good as yours, but she's trying. I'm trying too, Mom. Every day." I placed the photo in the drawer with the other letters. The drawer was full now, 8 months of effort, accountability, and quiet apologies. Maybe it was time to acknowledge that. In May, Ruth organized a dance group gathering at my house. It was the first celebration I'd hosted since Devon left. The women arrived with food, laughter, and music. My living room filled with joy. We danced, ate, and shared stories. Mrs. Jenkins brought old neighborhood photos, and we laughed for hours. Ruth raised her glass. A year ago, Eleanor was broken. Today, she's a woman who shines for second chances. For 2 second chances, everyone echoed. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my garden beneath the stars. Luna slept peacefully on my lap. The air was warm and scented with flowers. Then I heard the gate. It was Devon, alone. "I'm sorry to come so late, Mom," he said quietly. I saw the lights were still on. "Could I talk to you for a moment?" I studied him for a long time. Then, for the first time in 8 months, I opened the gate. "Come in," I said. "Just for a moment." He stepped inside carefully, as if afraid I'd change my mind. He sat on the garden bench, keeping his distance. Luna watched him curiously. "Is that new?" he asked, pointing at her. "Her name is Luna," I said. "I adopted her a few months ago. She's beautiful." There was a pause. Then he took a deep breath. "Mom, I didn't come to ask for anything. I just wanted to tell you, I saw you with Ken. You looked happy. And that makes me happy too. You deserve that." I studied him. "What are you trying to say, Devon?" "Nothing more," he said softly. "I don't expect forgiveness anymore. I don't expect things to go back to how they were. I just hope that one day, when you see me, you don't feel pain. Even indifference would be more than I deserve." There was no pleading in his voice. No manipulation. Just acceptance. "Devon," I said slowly, I don't feel indifferent when I see you. I still feel pain. But I also see your effort. I see that you're changing. I don't know what our future looks like, but I acknowledge that you're trying. And for the first time, that felt like the truth. I saw tears slide down his cheeks. That's more than I ever expected to hear, he said quietly. Thank you, Mom. He stood up, ready to leave, but I stopped him. Devin, I said, come to dinner next Sunday. You and Candace. He froze. Really? I'm not promising that everything will be okay, I added calmly. But it's a start. His face lit up with careful, fragile hope. Really? Yes. 2:00 in the afternoon. Don't be late. After he left, I stayed in the garden for a long time, overwhelmed by mixed emotions. I hadn't forgiven them. Maybe I never would. But I was willing to give them the chance to prove that their change was real and lasting. Sunday came. Devin and Candace arrived exactly at 2:00. They brought flowers for the garden and a framed photograph they had restored. It was an old picture of me and Devin when he was little, both of us smiling in this very garden. Dinner was awkward at first. Forced small talk. Long silences. But slowly, something shifted. Devin talked about his job and how he was rebuilding his career from the ground up. Candace spoke honestly about therapy, about learning to value simple things instead of appearances. It wasn't magical. There were no hugs. No dramatic tears. But it was something real, a beginning. A small first step toward a relationship that, with years of honesty and effort, might grow into something new. When they left that afternoon, I stood in the doorway watching them climb into their old car. Mrs. Jenkins walked over from her garden. Did you forgive them? She asked gently. No, I answered honestly. But I'm giving them the chance to earn it. And if they truly want it, they'll have to work for it, for a long time. That night, sitting in my living room with Luna purring on my lap, I reflected on everything that had changed. I had gone from being a broken, humiliated woman to a strong, complete one. I had my beautiful home, loyal friends, the possibility of love with Ken, and now, perhaps, the possibility of rebuilding something with my son. The past no longer had power over me. Candace's cruelty. Devin's abandonment. Vivian's manipulation. All of it belonged to history. I had survived the storm and come out stronger, wiser, and whole. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Devin. Thank you for today, Mom. It was more than we deserved. We love you. I smiled and set the phone aside. I didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe next week. Because now, I was in control. I chose the terms. I chose my peace. Luna stretched and yawned. I stroked her gently and looked out at my garden glowing in the moonlight. Every flower I had planted symbolized my rebirth. Every wall I had painted declared my independence. This house was no longer a place of pain. It was my sanctuary. My victory. My home. And I, Ella Laner Thorne, at 64 years old, was finally truly living, not for others, not out of obligation, but for myself. For my happiness. For my peace. The past had lost its power. And the future shone with endless possibilities. Did you enjoy this story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If this story touched your heart, you can support me with a super thanks so I can continue bringing you more life stories like this. Thank you for your kindness and support. I'm looking forward to reading your thoughts. On your screen, you'll see 2 more life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect. Blue Heart.